was research about 10 years ago out of Harvard Business School showing that engineers in Silicon Valley were more productive when they socialized more at work. It's because they built those connections. So when they were stuck on their project, they said, oh, I can talk to Scott or Susan or Bob because they know how to solve this.
Just having the human connection of someone else working alongside me allows me to thrive. Knowing that about myself has allowed me to level up in major ways. So I cannot agree more with the concept of that connection.
Our brains are built for connection. We need connection to thrive. And so I published a book last year on happiness, late last year, and it's all about investing in relationships. It's a bunch of exercises and the free app that says, hey, do these things so that you strengthen those relationships. So the literature shows that if you have two, what I call 3 a.m. friends, if you have two people outside your family, you call it 3 a.m. and go, I'm having a crisis, just show up. I need you here. Like that's all you need in life, right? So how do you have that ability to call someone at 3 a.m.? Well, you've got to actually build that, invest in those relationships, build that strength of the relationship. And by having an app or anything, just a reminder or a weekly coffee or whatever that is, you're investing in that relationship and that relationship becomes reciprocal. If it's someone that you really care about, and having a couple of guy friends that you've had some crazy weird experiences with and traveled or whatever, like I have like 4 or 5 of these guys who are like they would bail me out anytime, anywhere, and that's amazing.
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting is we were talking pre-show about you being in San Diego, me being in Norfolk. So I've got lots of friends in the special forces community. Also, have been around lots of firefighters and police officers and people that serve. What's really interesting is when they retire or they separate, they struggle not
Mhm.
just because of the things they did, see, and lived, but also the camaraderie. And I've had this conversation recently. I was talking to a buddy of mine who it was in the most elite team in the Navy, and we were discussing, the value of building relationships in business. And so I was giving him some guidance and mentorship on, listen, this isn't a transaction. It might all be good logically, but you've got to go in and build the relationship with the individual. So you build trust and you build connection and you work together to find what's important to him, not just the result. They've been in business for X number of years. And we got to talking about the connection that they had versus business people. And I said, what's really funny about business people is sometimes we need those extra relationships because we don't have as many. There's not as much camaraderie. The more you climb the corporate ladder, the more you become the CEO, the boss, the less that camaraderie, the less that connectivity happens. And a lot of people are isolated and they don't have those two friends you mentioned. They don't have those two 3 a.m. friends. They have two people that work for them. And so
Right.
we were talking about the importance of building the relationship, building the trust, connecting beyond the business deal and how important that could be. But it got us thinking wider, even in the camaraderie that they miss, the two kind of conflicting thoughts there that I was going in, and that's what ADHD does to you. You kind of go in two different thoughts sometimes, but I love it.
But let's follow up on that, right? So why does the bonding in the military become so strong? Part of it is because you're in an extreme situation, right? They sometimes call it trauma bonding, but to be in a place where you're doing bodily functions in front of other people, you are depending on them literally for your life. So again, for people who are not in the military who are listening, having those extreme experiences is a really important way to rapidly bond to somebody. So before I started doing this work, 30 years ago, research, I thought, the whitewater rafting trip for the company, that's just a stupid idea. But neurologically, it makes perfect sense, right? So I'm seeing people under stress. I'm seeing people perform. So I used to teach a class based on a book I wrote in 2017 on high performance organizations. And as part of the class, it's like an MBA class, I would take them out to the mountains and we would go in this zip line out in the snow. And it was rigorous and people were scared and we all hung together and you're cold. And it was a little bit, and I tell you what, 2 hours out there hiking around the snow and doing some zip lines and rappelling, that class got bonded right away. So, kind of think about creating an environment of uncomfortableness where we have to depend on each other to get through it. So I think I have a software company. So in the startup world, we're always talking about survival. Like we're like, holy crap, can we make payroll? And so that kind of focus, I think Elon Musk does a good job at that is at his companies, right? Of that survival focus all the time. Like we have to get through the next 2 weeks and hit these challenge goals. So from a brain perspective, challenge stress is really good for us, right? Chronic stress is not good, but for most of us, stress resolves on its own, right? So again, chronic stress is when you can't stop thinking about something, you're not sleeping, not good. But having those challenges builds up your resilience, builds up your emotional fitness. So from a business perspective, think about creating these stretch goals, these challenge goals, and forcing people to come together to meet these goals. And that has a kind of trauma bonding.
Well, what's really interesting is I spent 23 years in wealth management, and what I can tell you is in 2008, the clients that stayed with you in '08 and '09 became parts of your family because the stress that we all felt, whether it was us carrying it on their shoulders, whether it was leading them through a challenging time, coming out of it and winning so substantially, right? These
Right.
are all big things. And then when we come into our company, years, 10 years ago, I started something called the Monday Morning Huddle. And the Monday Morning Huddle was all of us getting together on a Zoom meeting at 9 a.m. I can't say life comes first and never put life first. So, as a leader, we would do the Monday Morning Huddle. And it was simply about what did we get into over the weekend? And people started sharing. And you know what happens? You now know when this person gets a new car and that new car means the world to them because they're a car person. Or this
Right.
person is married for 23 years and they went to this place they've always dreamed of going. And now you have these connections that go beyond the day job. Then we finish the week for 30 minutes with wins and challenges. So what did we win at? And that's a chance for us to celebrate each other and a chance for the challenges of the organization to be shared across the board so people could actually work through those together. What you saw over that decade was a very, very close-knit entity with people and humans that loved each other beyond just the business. And
Mhm.
everything you're saying, I couldn't agree more. I've always loved those out of work experiences because they bond you in a way that, yes, it might be built around stress, but we all built it together. We got through it together, and that means something.
And
So,
first of all, I really like that you use the L word. I'm a big fan of actually telling people around you that you love them. Again, often in the philia sense, right? So my team members, uh, 15 years ago, Fast Company had a cover article about me calling me Dr. Love because I focus on the neurobiology of connection and care. But when we connect, we're more effective, right? We are team players. Our brains are set up to be a team. And in fact, again, for listeners, it is not at all unusual for humans to put them together in a building and have them work on a joint goal, right? As long as you tell them, hey, this is where we're going, this is where we're going, people that's natural for us. Forget this Marxist BS. It's not exploitation. People are voluntarily choosing to do this, and we like to be in teams. We like to be in groups. So, Scott, I'm interested in your view on this, but I'm a fan of the return to work focus. I think being physically in person is actually important, at least part of the time, maybe 3 days a week, maybe five. And if you're a business leader and if you're in there 5 days a week, people are going to start showing up, right? They want to be seen. And so I think you have to do what you have to practice what you preach.
well, you and I talked about the word freedom when we started this conversation prior to coming on live. And what's really interesting about freedom is discipline is freedom. And the
Mm.
discipline and commitment together of showing up every single day to a career, a job, anything where you can learn with, from, and you could teach someone else. That is extremely powerful. So I couldn't agree more with the value. I struggled during the COVID timeline. There was things that I did that I loved. I loved the endorphin release of being in a concert. I love listening to live music. I like going and being around friends. I don't even care if I go alone. Like it's something that
Right.
I was doing that when you took that away from COVID, it was painful. Also, I work best with other people. I have an EA. We have a list of all the things I have to get done. She will walk into my office, she'll sit down, and we will go through item by item. And sometimes I'll just start working on them and I get them done 30 seconds. Like they're things that would live in your brain for days, but they're things that you can just get through. Just having the human connection of someone else working alongside me allows me to thrive. Knowing that about myself has allowed me to level up in major ways. So I cannot agree more with the concept of that connection. And I wanna go deeper down this, Dr. Love, but I want to give you any time to respond to that point that I was just making, just agreeing with you.
Real quickly, there was research about 10 years ago out of Harvard Business School showing that engineers in Silicon Valley were more productive when they socialized more at work. Why would that be the case, right? You're spending time talking. What is that about? It's because they built those connections. So when they were stuck on their project, they said, "Oh, I can talk to Scott or Susan or Bob because they know how to solve this." So again, building those social connections is important. And this is not bad. This kind of video conference, we've shown neurologically, you get between 50 and 80% of the value of an in-person experience when you're in video, which kind of surprisingly high to me when we found this. So, video's not bad, and virtual group, teams are fine. But I think if you have a virtual workforce, try to have that workforce get together once a month if possible, or at least once a quarter, physically get together. I know it takes money and time, but find some central place and actually physically get together, even for virtual teams, because it's going to strengthen those relationships. And you mentioned this guy. We chatted before we started recording, right? And that's what we do in person. Is hey, before a meeting, how was your weekend? But when you have a Zoom meeting, we have a scheduled online meeting. We do less of that because it's scheduled, right? We don't have that random collision to have a discussion about. So I think that's another reason to build those bonds. Again, I'm a very efficient guy like you, Scott. I just, it's like, what they say, like, if you want something done, ask a busy person. I'm just banging out work all day. But I also need that social component, and I need the people who I depend on and also who depend on me to maintain that level of productivity.
Well, what's interesting is you mentioned, the Marxist bullshit kind of stuff, right? And here's what doesn't work. You know what doesn't work? Me working for you when I don't know you, like you, and trust you. What
Mhm.
does work is me working for you, with you, by your side, and helping you because I care about you. And human nature says we need that connection first. I think science also tells us that. So we can argue both the human nature and the science, and create our own logic and ideologies, but they're not real if they don't actually apply once executed. And
Right.
so when I think about working together, and I like Bill Campbell, the stories of the trillionaire, the $1 trillion coach. He was the
Right.
coach to Gates and Jobs and all the leaders in Silicon Valley, and what he was known for was vacation talk. So he would start every conversation with, where have you been lately? Where are you going? What people get excited about that. They want to share a part of their human experience. And when you connect on a human experience, you have such a deeper level of work together. You want to work together. And I think it's relationship over transaction. And so what you're doing is you're providing me the science to everything I believed in my entire life. So I love it and I'm grateful you're here. So YouTube has this cool feature where they pick the next video for you, and it's right here on this screen. So I hope you enjoy this next video.